On today's Locked On Thunder podcast, it's talking season, so let's have NBA hot takes in July.
You are Locked On Thunder, your daily Oklahoma City Thunder podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Let's get it going on the Locked On Thunder podcast on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I am your host, media member and beat writer for Thunder on SI, Rylan Stiles. Follow me on Twitter at Rylan_Stiles. Follow the show on Twitter at LOThunderPod. Email the show, LOThunderPod@gmail.com. On today's show, we're joined by Michael Martin at Michael on Sports. Let's Talk Thunder on YouTube to dive into NBA hot takes. It's July. We're officially in the dog days of the summer. It is exceptionally hot outside. I think we can make it even hotter with our takes here in July about the NBA, about the Thunder. I'm excited to just throw stuff at the wall, Michael, and see what sticks.
Oh, we're trying to char some eyebrows off with some of these takes. Some of these, maybe we believe them, some maybe we don't, but either way, we're going to have some fun, like you mentioned, the dog days of the season, and reward the people listening for that.
Let's dive in to some Thunder hot takes first to kind of ease in, because there's not a ton of just like hot takes you can have with the Thunder. So these won't necessarily knock your socks off. I might have one that is a bit bold for OKC, but I'll start off pretty calm. And I don't even know if this classifies as a hot take, but even in the Western Conference, Chet Holmgren will be an all-star this season. I think that when you look at his production prior to the hip injury in a very small sample size, 9 games, he was en route to an all-star appearance, and even more than that, if he were to replicate those 9 games over the course of a full season. I think that when you factor in team success, when you factor in what he's going to be able to do as a scorer this year and what he already is defensively, that he's going to earn a spot in the All-Star game whenever it tips off on that Sunday in February.
I'd say that's a light spice, but nothing crazy like you mentioned. We're easing our way in, getting our toes in the pool. I also had a Chet one in there that I don't think is too crazy either. And to your point, I don't think it's wild to say that he's going to be an all-star. I think that's definitely likely, depending on team record, things like that. Guys in the West, health, weird things can happen. But my Chet one was he's going to get his first 40-point game next season. He scored 36 against the Warriors, I think, in his rookie season. That was the one where he hit the 3 in the corner to force OT. But I think that we're going to see a very, very big Chet scoring game at least once next season.
And I think that with that, his pathway to 40 is like knocking in threes and being able to play off the catch. And I think that that's going to be the offensive role that you see him play and see him play successfully through the course of this season. So 40 points would be very loud. It would be very awesome. The reactions to it, if it happened, would be fun. But whenever you're reacting to it, I agree. It would be fun. It would be shocking just to see him get to the nice round number, but it's within the realm of possibility that he scores 40 points.
Yeah, if you get 36, you're right there within striking distance to 40. So it's not crazy, but it's just with Chet, you think of him more of a defensive player, more of a play finisher. And for him to get a scoring night like that, knock on wood, we're not wishing any injuries, but maybe there's a stretch where Shai is out or Dub's out, and they really need him to step up as a secondary scorer, and he really just puts it on from there. But what's your next hot Thunder take?
Michael, I pride myself and think of myself as a man of faith and an unbiased party here. But the one place where Mr. Rational becomes irrational with Oklahoma City is Isaiah Joe. I think that Isaiah Joe this season will have a breakout year, not even necessarily just about percentages, but the quality of his looks and the volume of his looks will rise. And I think that if you get a higher volume from Isaiah Joe, and even if his percentages stay flatline to how they've been over the last 2 seasons, the higher volume will unlock a lot of things for the Thunder offense. I think that he's going to be more comfortable this year playing off of guys like Ihart, coming off of screens and DHOs, and being a better movement shooter. And I think that that's the thing. It really comes down to, can this hot take come true for the lifespan of Isaiah Joe to be an actual piece for Oklahoma City, to be a playoff level piece for Oklahoma City? This hot take has to come true. And it either will or won't, but I still believe in Isaiah Joe. Perhaps I should not believe in Isaiah Joe anymore. Perhaps I should not believe that he can still develop, but I do think that he can have a breakout season when it comes to 3-point volume and the movement of those threes to allow the Thunder's half-court offense to breathe a bit better.
Well, last year he shot 6 a game at 41%. He's never shot more than 41. What are you feeling hot takey, what would he have to shoot to, I guess, get to the point where you'd feel like, okay, I nailed this one?
I think if he shoots like 9 threes a game, it would feel really loud for him. It would feel really good of where he's at, because you factor in his role of like there's going to be some games where you just really understand in the course of the game. And Mark's really good at this, of just looking at a game and saying, okay, this is one that we have to win by grinding it out defensively. You've got to play all of your defensive hound dogs the entire game and get it done in the mud. But there's also going to be games where you need an offensive jump start. And in those games, it can't just be Isaiah Joe taking 4 threes or 5 threes or 6 threes, being a stationary catch and shoot shooter. He's got to launch those things, and he's got to be more comfortable taking the threes whenever he's 3 steps behind the line and extending his range a little bit, on top of being more comfortable relocating off the ball as a shooter. I think that if he can get to 9 per game, that all averages out or close to that number, it would feel like a success for this hot take.
Yeah, if he can become like a B tier, A tier level shooting threat, like almost like Malik Beasley turned into last year, I think that's a home run for the Thunder. My next hot take is, so Cason Wallace last year played 68 games. He started 43 of them. That's 63%. I'm going to say Cason starts 75% of the games he plays in next season in the regular season.
I like that hot take. I like that because it is, I think this is the first real hot take, because this would mean that if we're projecting stuff in July, you obviously can't predict injuries. We know that they're going to happen eventually through the course of the season. It happens to every single team. But in July, you can't like factor in how many games is Chet or iHeart or whoever going to miss, to where it does force the Thunder to not play double bigs because they don't have both of their big men option. So when you're looking at it in July, to predict this number for Cason, I think is a hot take, because it looks like the Thunder really want to make the double big stuff work. However, throughout the course of last season, and it was still a small sample size, you only got it from February 7th until the end of the playoffs, and in the finals you saw them go away from double bigs against the Pacers. And I just think that you look at how functional this team is with one big on the floor, and you look at how Isaiah Hartenstein handled being quote unquote benched in the finals, and even before that. I know that the finals got a lot of attention, but like the Minnesota series, they started double bigs against Minnesota. They quickly faded away from that throughout the course of the game. And I think that you just saw that that's their best lineup on the court, is whenever you have Cason out there with Chet at the 5, and then you bring in iHeart as your bench big, and you can still play them together throughout the course of a game very sparingly. But to start a game, I think that Cason's your best option, especially if you don't want to start Alex Caruso, which they seem pretty hell-bent on not doing. So I like this hot take, and I hope that this hot take comes true.
Yeah, because also there's a real path that Cason's just played his way into it, where it's just like there's no real discussion about it unless you're playing against Jokic, unless you're playing against a team where like by default you have to go double big. Like you mentioned, Caruso could start, but he's not probably going to, as we saw with the Thunder. I think I saw earlier doing the research for this, he started like 3 games, which was surprising to me. I didn't even think it was that many last year. So I think that Cason, there's a real path for him. And Hartenstein, I think that he's fine coming off the bench in terms of just like attitude-wise. I don't think that he's going to make a big fight about it. It's more about just the minutes he plays, and when he plays, he closes and stuff like that. But injuries can be a big factor in that. But so hopefully this is right. I'm right there with you in agreeing that I hope that I'm right with 75% starts.
So I'm glad that we've kind of built up to this crescendo here, because my hottest take is also the last take for this segment from me. Thomas Schwarber, as a rookie, averages over 16.7 minutes per game, which was Jay Will's average last year. So if you look at Jay Will and the role that he played while battling through injury and while being kind of sort of in and out of the rotation, whenever he was healthy and whenever the Thunder got fully healthy, he kind of bounced around a little bit. But when you play Schwarber, I think that the games in which you inject him into, he's going to do enough to want to be on the floor, and you want to keep him on the floor for a long period of time and a long stretch of time in those games. I think that this can be inflated a little bit, also due to the preconceived notion I have that could be wrong, but I just have this preconceived notion that like on back-to-backs and in 3-game and 4-night stretches, especially when you look at that jam-packed schedule coming out of the NBA Cup, that you're going to see Schwarber be elevated on this roster, in the sense of you're not going to want to play Chet in those back-to-backs or iHeart in those back-to-backs, and you're going to see more minutes open up in the front court for a guy like Schwarber, who can play the exact identity of Oklahoma City. So perhaps this is like too hot of a take, but I do think that he can reach over that threshold that Jay Will got to a year ago.
That is a pretty hot one. I don't think it's ridiculous. I can see it. I don't think it's likely, which is why it's a hot take. But we've seen guys like Chet and Hartenstein miss a lot of time, and Jay will even miss some time where they're made to the point where they have to play J-Dub at center. So there's a real possibility there's a stretch there where he's just the backup center. I think that it could just get killed in the averages just by him playing spot minutes here and there. He plays like 3 minutes a game, 2 minutes a game, where the Thunder up by like a million. But I don't think that's ridiculous, and it's another thing like the case in point I mentioned earlier where you hope that means it's a sign of confidence in Sorber that he's ready to play in these games and he's not just sort of thrust into the fire, which I don't think the Thunder will really do. But I think that's a pretty good hot take for sure. I've got two more here. The Thunder get 4 players on the all defensive teams is one of them. There was a lot of talk about just like make one of the all defensive teams just Thunder guys. But what if more guys stay healthy this year, Rylan, and now they finally have the credit and sort of the cachet of like doing what they did last year, more guys making all defensive teams, that I think that it's a real possibility that you get Dort again, Dub again, maybe Chet plays enough games, and then you have a whole variety of wild cards of like Caruso, Hart, and even down to Shea, who I think have a real chance and a fighting chance to get those spots.
This hot take is one that is hot. It is not likely, like you mentioned, but that's why they're hot takes. But it's also one that is more than just about the accolade itself. To me, if you told me today that the Thunder would occupy 4 spots of an all-defensive roster that only has 2 teams, it would mean that the Thunder were the number 1 seed again, and that they once again had a 68-plus win season of just like this historically great win total, this historically great team. Because to reach that goal, it's going to take Caruso and Chet playing 65 games. Lou and J-Dub is like, that's way more realistic of them playing 65-plus games. They've not really missed that plateau at all or dealt with the injuries to cause them to do that. But you would need those other 2 guys to play, and to play a lot this season. And Chet's played 82 games before in his career. That's the thing with Chet that I think is so interesting whenever you're trying to project what he's going to do this season. What we've seen of Chet so far is just too early to tell, because when he doesn't have a freak accident, he plays 82. And when he does have a freak accident, he either doesn't play at all in that first year or he plays like he did last year. So it's just, what if he doesn't have a freak accident, you have to pencil him in for hitting that 65% threshold, that 65 game threshold, to where if he can be on the court and Caruso can be on the court that long, there's just no way that this team doesn't win those games, that this team does not win enough games to be the 1 seed in the West. And that, I think, is paramount for the Thunder's chances of repeating, is to get on the opposite side of the bracket of teams like Denver, of teams like Houston, and make their way to the West Finals.
Yeah, I just think the defensive depth is just all over the place. And what I mentioned earlier about just once you get that respect of some of the voters, they start penciling you in a little bit more. Like we've seen guys live off of all defensive reputations for years, like years and years after they're washed. Like Marcus Smart is still looked at as an elite defender by a lot of media members who aren't watching games. He's not that guy anymore. I think that could really help the Thunder in that instance, and I think that they would all deserve it. And then the last hot take I have for the Thunder, which, you know, he's sort of like been on the edge of this a few times. I think he finally gets over the hump because he's been so efficient and because the Thunder are going to be up in a lot of games where he's not going to have to chuck a lot of shots. And that is Shai going 50, 40, 90.
Oh, Michael. 50, 40, 90. I mean, first of all, the Twitter propaganda would be out of control if he went 50, 40, 90. But I like it. I think that this is the charring the eyebrows off of a hot take. This is incredible.
I mean, it's not crazy. Let me look at his numbers from last year. He shot 52, 89.8, basically 90. And then from 3, he shot 37.5. He's like right there. So it's not crazy. And like I mentioned, if they're up in a lot of games where he's just taking comfortable shots, they're winning comfortably, he's not playing deep into the fourth quarter where there's a lot of high leverage moments where they're more contested, I think that's very, very realistic for him. And we've only seen him get better and more efficient. So I don't think it's a crazy leap. It would still be wild because you look at the list of guys to shoot 50, 40, 90, and it's like Bird, Durant, Nash, I think Kyrie 1 year, just like very, very few guys. But I think that Shai has a real shot to join that list this season.
Yeah, and I think that there's 2 ways that this could play out. It's just like he cuts out the threes of his shot diet unless they're just unbelievably comfortable and unbelievably open. But the more fun way for this to play out would just be that we've seen Shai develop every single year some skill set that he didn't have before. Like this year, he was a much better playmaker than he's ever been. And he still has room to grow in that area, but he was much better this year than he's ever been. And to me, to reach this number, he would have to evolve as a pull-up three-point shooter, which then makes the Thunder, they're already the favorites, but it makes the Thunder even better than they were a year ago. If you get to the point where Shai on these step backs and coming and dribbling off screens and launching a three gets to that 40% threshold, he's truly unguardable. Like, where at that point, how do you defend him? Because you either have to surrender these threes that now he's hitting at an exceptional clip, or try to pick him up higher, and then he gets to the shots he actually likes and actually prefers in the paint and at the rim and at the elbow and in the mid-range and so like at the baseline. Like he gets to all of his spots even more than he already did to be the MVP and the scoring champion. That if this of all the hot takes we've given, this is the one that to me is the biggest championship indicator, because if he gets to 50, 40, 90 and it's not through just not taking threes, it's through actually still playing his game, then the Thunder are going to win the title again.
Yeah, and it's not crazy with some of these threes. I mean, we saw him really implement it last year with the pull-up, and if he has a full season body of work, that full off season, and now this one, and now an entire season of film that he can watch on it, I think there's a real chance that he sort of adjusts and adapts to this and gets even better. I know that we've seen him just sort of slowly but surely speed up his shots and clean up his mechanics. And I think that we're not going to see a ton of step backs as much, but I think the pull-up is definitely going to be there just because teams are going to be so concerned about packing the paint against him because he just kills on drives that I don't think he's going to chuck shots up, but he's going to force you to play him out on the perimeter a little bit more.
Coming up, we're going to have some NBA hot takes and how they relate to Oklahoma City. But first one, here right now, but good friends over at FanDuel. Go check out FanDuel today because the summer sports are in full swing. Whether you're all about baseball under the lights, golf on the greens, or high-stakes soccer action, FanDuel is the best way to make every game even more exciting. You're already following the action. Why not make it a little bit more thrilling with FanDuel? You can get in the game while your friends are getting sunburned in the bleachers. Go check it out today at FanDuel with their new daily promotions that give you fun ways to bet and keep it fresh. You can also play same-game parlays or watch a bet ride out for all 9 innings. FanDuel makes it feel like you're a part of the action. And if you're new to FanDuel, new customers can get just a $5 bet. If you win that $5 bet, your first one, you get $150 in bonus bets if you win that first $5 bet. Open the FanDuel app today. Go to FanDuel.com to get started. If you only care about the NBA, and you probably only do if you're listening to an NBA podcast in late July, well, you can also bet on the NBA, where the Thunder are the favorites to go win the championship again. SGA is second in the MVP race, according to FanDuel. Go check it out today at FanDuel.com. We're back on the Locked On Thunder podcast, on the Locked On Podcast Network, your teams every day. I'm Rylan Stiles. We're joined by Michael Martin of Let's Talk Thunder on YouTube, and Michael on sports on social media. And go check out Locked On Lakers for your second listen, because I really like what the Lakers have done, and they're the home of my first NBA hot take. Marcus Smart has his best three-point shooting season of his career. He has to surpass 36% from three, and I think that playing alongside Luka Doncic is going to allow him to do this. We've seen Luka Doncic before elevate the percentages of his role players because of his magnificent playmaking and scoring gravity, and Thunder fans need no reminders of who he's transformed into good three-point shooters. And Marcus Smart, when you look at what he did off the catch this last season on a very small sample size with Washington, you look at what he looked like in that Boston system off the catch, now playing alongside Luka, I think will elevate him to the point where he has his best three-point shooting season of his career, especially in this role where you imagine he'll be playing offensively a lot more off the ball and a lot more off of Luka Doncic to elevate him. And in the same vein, Luka Doncic also makes it to where DeAndre Ayton is having such a season that people are legitimately calling Ayton an all-star snub. He doesn't quite make the team, but the media machine around the Lakers thinks that he should have whenever we get to the Midwinter Classic.
That's what I was about to say. Is this all the media, or is this the people located in LA who have a sort of a rooting interest to be around the Lakers and they want them to do well? That is pretty hot, especially about Marcus Smart. I mean, he hasn't played 35 games in the last 2 years. He's played like 55 total in the last 2 years. So I don't know. If he can shoot like that, it would definitely change a lot of things for them. I do wonder about just his legs as an older player and sort of the defensive responsibility that he's going to have if he's going to have the legs on the other end. But we know this, like you mentioned, Luka and LeBron are going to set guys up for threes. Marcus Smart is going to be obviously one of those guys who gets left open because you can't leave LeBron, Luka, and even to a degree Austin Reeves one-on-one on an island. You got to double those guys. So he's going to get some shots up, but I'd say that's pretty hot going on the scale so far. My first one of just NBA hot takes is Victor Wembanyama, first team All-NBA. And it sounds crazy, but when you look at it, Tatum is out, and we've seen Giannis is going to be on a pretty bad team. They value winning, and I think that a lot of people just want to sort of crown Wemby. I don't think that's a crazy thing, like you mentioned, the media cycle. And I think that he's going to be the defensive player of the year. He's going to be all defense. And I think we're going to see a real leap from him this season in the first year completely where they have an entire team built around him with competent players. So I'm really excited to see him. And we've seen, as I just mentioned, Giannis is not going to be on a great team. I think that there's a real pathway for them to be like a 6 seed or something like that. And with that being said, I think there's a real opportunity for Wemby to sort of just seize one of those spots in the first team All-NBA.
Yeah, I really like that. I really think that if they are the 8th seed or above, that he's going to be able to accomplish this goal. Because for them to do that, he's going to have to play enough games to be qualified for these lists. And you see the narratives play a big part in this. So when you mix in the narratives and the production, it can elevate him on top of, we already know that there's a handful of guys who otherwise would be All-NBA players who are already just disqualified. Like Tatum, for example, like you mentioned, is disqualified. So there's also going to be guys who we're expecting right now to be healthy, but just aren't. Like you look at the All-NBA list and the guys who are capable of cracking that list, like Halliburton, like Tatum, who are just not going to play a single minute. Anyone else who just suffers bumps and bruises continues to slide Wemby up that pecking order on top of the production that it will take for him and the Spurs to reach the heights that I think they'll reach, that we think that they're going to reach. I have the Spurs as a top 8 seed. So with that being said, I have to agree with this hot take. And this next hot take is brought to you by BetterHelp because I need help. I need to get help. I admit it. Listen, the first step to recovery is admitting whenever you need help. And I cannot quit the Philadelphia 76ers. I can't do it. I've done this show, Michael, since May of 2020. And believe me, a daily show from May of 2020, whenever there's nothing going on, was tough. But the one consistent thing about this show, as we've evolved, has been the love for the Philadelphia 76ers. I've never picked Philadelphia to finish lower than like the 3 seed on this show. And I'm not starting today. They're going to be a top 5 seed in the East because I believe that this is the year. This is the year that they get healthy. They're going to have home court advantage in the East with the top 4 seed. I think that Paul George and Embiid are going to figure it out enough to where then you flank them with Jared McCain, who I love Jared McCain. I thought the Thunder should have drafted him. I think he's an awesome player. I love VJ Edgecombe. Those are 2 of my favorite draft prospects of the last 2 drafts that both play for Philadelphia. Oh, yeah, you also have Tyrese Maxey. I believe in Nick Nurse as a head coach to the nth degree. I like some of their just weird role players like Watford. I think that he's going to be a really good piece for them. And the East is so bad. It's so bad that on top of just the absolute druthers of the East, I think that someone's going to underperform a little bit, whether it be from injury or just not playing up to par, that Philadelphia sneaks into a home court advantage seed, a top 4 seed in the East.
I don't think that's crazy. I think the crazier thing would be how deep they go in the playoffs because I just don't believe in Embiid playing in that many playoff series and playoff minutes. I think that they can sort of get carried by just Maxey and Paul George and Embiid just being okay to really good. I think that Maxey, he's one of my favorite players in the league, one of the more underrated guys. I like Jared McCain. I liked what I saw from VJ as well. So I think that's a pretty good one, but we've just seen they're just so inconsistent that they're the ultimate stay away team. They're sort of like we've seen from the Clippers the last few years where it's like, yeah, on paper they should be top 3-4 seed, but we're not playing on paper, we're playing basketball, and some of these guys are, as fragile as paper in some of these games that we've seen where they're getting injured. So I would rate that pretty spicy just because of what we've seen in the past. My next one, Rylan, for the first time since 2017, we're going to have our first American-born MVP.
Wow. Cooper Flag?
I didn't say that. I almost said on top of that, I think it's going to be somebody in the East, just because I think that conference is for the taking. And, maybe Shai goes back-to-back, maybe Jokic gets his revenge tour. But I think this is finally the year that we see an American win MVP for the first time since James Harden did back in 2017.
I think that is a amazingly hot take. I think that's the best, the true definition of a hot take yet on this show, because I think that Giannis just getting in the top 3 of the East, or even just the top 4 of the East with the roster that he has, elevates him to a top 3 spot. I think that the voters will not let Jokic finish anywhere beneath 3. So that's 2 top 3 spots right there before we even mention what Shai does in this kind of back-to-back journey. So for someone to dethrone all 3 of them, as an American player, it's not Luka, it's not anyone like that. Like that's a hot take, and I think that for that to happen, it would be one of the best seasons of basketball, because you just know what Luka's going to do. I think that Luka's poised to have a bounce back year. You know what Shai and Giannis and Jokic are going to do. So if there's another player who's of that caliber, good enough to win the MVP, like this season's going to be a lot of fun.
I think the pathway is that the Bucks are bad for one. Giannis either demands a trade or they're just bad. Jokic, as we've seen before, sort of just coasts. He gets his numbers, but they coast in the regular season. They're not trying to win, get the number 1 seed. The Thunder coast and get the number 1 seed. Not coast, but they're playing hard, but Shai's not having to exert himself on a night-to-night basis. And on the other end, we talked about the Lakers media machine. How about the New York Knicks? Jalen Brunson, he gets a new coach. They finally make the leap. I think there's a real path there. It's not something I would bet on, which is why it's a hot take, but it's something I wanted to at least throw out there.
Jalen Brunson on the number 1 seed. I mean, that clears a path for Jalen Brunson to be able to capture an MVP award. This hot take is brought to you by Michael Martin. Josh Giddey is an all-star in the East. We've talked about this, and I have not been able to get it out of my head since you brought this up. I think that Josh Giddey will be an all-star out East. I think that whenever you look at him and what he did in the second half of the season, if he's averaging an efficient near triple-double with the lack of talent, frankly, in the Eastern Conference, there's no reason why he shouldn't be in there. Whenever you factor in the fan vote that'll be behind him, when you factor in just the peers that he'll be battling, the numbers that he's going to put up is worthy of an all-star appearance.
Yeah, you robbed me here. That's my hot take that we've talked about before. It was on my list, actually. I was going to get to that next. Yeah, I think there's a real path there. We've seen guys like Tatum's been injured. Dame goes west. And then we have just a bunch of guys like, I don't think there's a high likelihood that the Cavs get 3 All-Stars again. I think that was sort of a one-off. I don't know if they'll do that again. The Knicks are going to get 2 guys, but if Josh Giddey, if the Bulls somehow get a much better record, maybe the Magic have a few too many injuries, I think that he could be in that Trae Young spot or the Tyler Hero spot. So I think there's a real path for him in that. And then the other one I have, which is not connected to the Thunder take. So this is not, I'm taking all 6 of the 10 all defensive spots. Rylan, we see both Thompson twins make all defense this year.
You've already penciled in the all defensive team. It's locked in.
Oh, they're not connected at all. This is one or the other. We're not getting 6 of the 10 spots already locked in, or I guess I already did 7 if I put Wemby in there. So, oh, you muted yourself.
I like the take here. I think that both of them are of that caliber.
Yeah, I think that both teams are going to be elite defensively or just really good defensively. Sorry, you're going to see with most of the prime defensive assignments for Detroit. And then Amin, you've seen the train already start to get going. He's an elite defender. Those guys are just nuclear level athletes, and I think that they're prime for another leap this season.
And I think that with Amin, you look at it and they were a really good defense last year. You can't take anything away from them defensively last year. But to play the bulk of your minutes with Şengün and KD, who are, I think better defenders than they might get credit for, but they're still, you wouldn't expect a 5-man lineup that had both of those guys to be at the top of the league in defense. And I think that Amin can make that happen for them because those 2 guys at least compete, and Amin's so awesome that he will be the representative of the Rockets. If they can get back to that top 5 defense in the league, they're going to have a representative to me. If they do it with this roster, and I think that he's going to be the guy that they tab as an all defensive team for Houston and for defense that's going to be that's good.
Yeah, and the thing that I'm pointing to the most is Dillon Brooks is gone. They need a point of attack defender. They need a go-to defender, and if you're looking around, he's the only one who can do it. Fred VanVleet's not going to do it. KD and Şengün, know those guys can't. Jabari Smith's a pretty solid defender. Even a guy like Tari Eason's pretty good, but Amin Thompson is the only guy who I can see on a night-to-night basis sort of get those Lou Dort-like matchups and do solid. So I think that it's going to be really interesting. But having both twins in all defense, I think would be incredible.
It would be awesome. It'd be a great story. Coming up, I think perhaps my hottest take, I don't want to sell it too strong, but I got a hot take about my Dallas Mavericks. We're back on the Lockdown Thunder podcast, on the Lockdown Podcast Network, your teams every day. I got two more hot takes for you. One of them is the Dallas Mavericks. Go listen to Lockdown Mavs because they're really excited about this future for the Dallas Mavericks, even after the disastrous Luka Doncic trade. I think that the Dallas Mavericks will win a playoff series. We've seen that home court advantage has not mattered a ton recently. The last few years, we've seen these lower seeds pull off quote-unquote upsets and get to the next round. And I think that Dallas will be a lower seed due to Kyrie's injury and him coming back midway through the year, Cooper Flagg trying to come into his own, AD bouncing in and out of their lineup. I think that they're going to be able to stay afloat, able to be a playoff team, but not necessarily like a home court advantage team, obviously, in the West. So by the end of the season, though, I think that what you'll see from Dallas is a high-end defense at the floor, an elite defense at the ceiling, the trio of AD and Cooper Flagg and Kyrie really hitting its stride, where AD, when AD's healthy, he's a top 12 player in this league. Kyrie, if he can come back from that injury seamlessly, will be a big factor come playoff time as a facilitator and a scorer. And then you have Cooper Flagg, who I think will really take a step as the season progresses. And he's one of those players who, even as a rookie, can make a winning impact. And then their role players are still capable role players. They're role players who you'd want on your team to help you navigate a playoff series. And I think that the Dallas Mavericks can get the right matchup and win a playoff series this year.
I think they can get the right matchup. I don't know. I just look at their roster and the health of guys like Anthony Davis. Kyrie, obviously, we know is going to miss time. I don't trust D'Angelo Russell. That's not a hot take. I know we're doing hot ones. That's not one. But I see them more as a play-in range team. And for them to get that first round win, I think that you'd have to see a team like San Antonio jump to two. Sort of like what we just saw last year with the Warriors and the Rockets, where it was a younger team finally breaking through and an old veteran team that knows what they're doing and just kind of beats them. So I'd say that's pretty spicy, which related to that, as I just mentioned them, Rylan, the Golden State Warriors are missing the playoffs this year.
Missing the playoffs entirely.
They're not making the playoffs.
After the play-in tournament's over, they're still not in it.
Yeah, no, they're not in. I think that this team is incredibly flawed in terms of how much they're relying on these older guys. I love Steph. I love Jimmy Butler. I think that Al Horford, if he eventually signs, is going to be a good signing. Draymond's been solid, but I think that they are a couple Steph, Jimmy injuries away in terms of just streaks from just falling, just flailing down the standings. And we've seen in the playoffs, these older teams, it just becomes a war of attrition and having depth. And not only is this Golden State Warriors team old, they're not really all that deep either. So I think this might be one of, if not the last dance for this Warriors team, is my hot take.
It is hot. And I think it's hot just because it's really tough to go out on that limb, especially in the NBA, because you just look at the NBA and you're just well, it's a star-driven league, and through the course of the 82-game season, there's not a ton of surprises year in and year out. There are some, but there's not a ton of surprises. And to get with a play-in tournament where half the conference makes the postseason, and then once you get to the play-in tournament, a team with Steph and Jimmy, no matter if they're going home or road, is going to be favored to get through it. But the fact that they're not going to make the playoffs at all, I think, is worthy of the hot take moniker, but would be really fun to see. Just as a basketball fan, it'd be really fun to see because that means someone else has outdone them in the regular season. Someone else has outdone them in the play-in tournament, and they've been able to push them all the way out. That would be really impressive. And I think that should be what the league is rooting for, just to continue to usher in this next wave. That means that San Antonio has to go jump up and steal a spot, or Portland gets rewarded for actually trying in the regular season and not coasting, and they get a spot in the play-in, and that it kind of bumps Golden State down, and so on and so forth. So I really like that hot take.
Yeah, I think that it's just looking at the landscape. We always see these young teams jump up. We see someone get injured, and they just seem like the team that's going to sort of have some bad luck. And like I mentioned, they're just one injury away from Jimmy or Steph or both of them at the same time, where it can just really derail their season, because outside of them, they don't have hardly any scoring or on-ball juice, as we just saw them get eliminated by the Wolves. Sort of that same thing. The whole Jonathan Kuminga saga is still up in the air, where even if you play him, you're just playing him to sort of showcase him to trade him later. I don't think he's a great player. And even if you do trade him, I don't think you're going to get a lot back. So I think that there's a real possibility. And we've seen them. What have they been in the playoffs, the play-in the last 2 years? So it's not crazy. And then once you get into the play-in and it's one game sample size, anything can happen. So I feel pretty good about that one.
I like that one. I'm going to be tracking that one all season because the Warriors, of course, are one of the biggest brands of basketball now after their dynastic run earlier this year. But my last hot take is perhaps my most tame take, or perhaps my most craziest take. I need your help to grade this one because I, once again, am all in on this team, and I shouldn't be all in on this team. I shouldn't be this confident in this take to where I even consider it to be a lukewarm take. The Washington Wizards are making the play-in tournament in the East. Someone has to win games. Somebody has to fill those spots. And I think that when you factor in that the wild card of like what does CJ and Chris do for this team, but even past those veterans for Washington, I think that when you look at Corey Kispert, Trey Johnson, Bilal Coulibaly, Alex Sarr, Bub Carrington, AJ Johnson showed flashes last year. Keyshawn George is a legit piece. The Cam Whitmore flyer this offseason, it was all brilliant. And these kids are going to try to win. These kids are going to try to go at your throat every single night. And the Thunder front office regime with Will Dawkins and them, like they've seen what it can do for a team who, like, yeah, if you look at this logically and you're looking at this in July, it's easy to cast them aside and say, well, they should really prioritize draft positioning. They should really prioritize losing and really prioritize like the lottery balls. But for Washington, I don't think that they're going to, like, if this take comes true, it means that they have to start the season hot. Like, they have to start the season out of the gate with a really strong October and a really strong November. And I don't think that that's going to cause any panic from Will Dawkins. I don't think it's going to cause any panic from the Wizards front office to, like, massively shut everyone down and freak out. I think they're going to let it ride. And if you let it ride after a strong start in the East, I think that's going to be enough for Washington to get into that play-in tournament. And I think that they're going to lose in the play-in tournament. They're not going to be a top 6 seed, a top 8 seed at the end of it in the first round, but they're going to make the NBA play-in tournament.
The Hawks and the Bulls are getting mad that you're stepping on their territory in the East play-in. That's their spot.
Yeah, the Hawks, the Bulls, the Heat. I'm sorry. It's time for new blood.
Yeah, the Raptors moving in there. You're going to knock one of those vets out. But I would say you were right to feel that that's hot and not at the same time in terms of, like, you look at the East and you're like, that's not that crazy because it's the East. But like you mentioned, they don't have the go-to guy yet. They don't have the star yet. I like some of their young guys. I'm not looking at any of them as blue chippers right now. I like Bilal a lot, but I don't know that he's going to be that guy either. The veterans will help, but those are still older guys. And like you mentioned, even if they start out strong, I don't think that they'll sort of lean back into the rebuild because, as we've seen the last couple of years, there's no reward for bottoming out, really. I'd still lean towards bottoming out just because I like the odds, but recently it hasn't gone in that direction. So I'd say that's hotter than it is cold just because of what we know about this Wizards roster. But at the same time, the East is such a crapshoot that who knows.
Do you have a hot take for us to end on?
I do. I don't know how much I believe it, but I'll act like I do. And that's the Magic get the number 1 seed in the East.
Wow. The Orlando Magic. Paolo, American-born MVP?
That'd be great for the agenda, but I think that Desmond Bane is going to have a real impact on this team. We know how good they are defensively already, so if they can get anything from Desmond Bane, and last year, even before that trade, the Magic were around the top 5, top 4 seed before they just got devastated by injuries to Suggs, Paolo, and Franz Wagner. So if they only get one of those guys missing a little bit of time or a big streak of like 20 games or so, I think they're going to have a real chance. And as we know, the East is so volatile that, like, from year to year to year, I don't see why they can't have sort of, not the exact same because that was still a historic season, but sort of a similar season to what we saw from the Cavs last year.
This was a lot of fun. It was a lot of fun to dive into NBA hot takes in July, and our NBA brains never shut off. So I was glad to have someone to bounce these off of. Go check out Let's Talk Thunder on YouTube because you've already teased to me privately your next video and a reference that's in that video that I personally will love. So your homework assignment is to go watch that new video whenever it drops and then let me know if you can find the reference that was made just for me. And you should be able to tell which one it is. So, Michael, I appreciate you hopping on. Go check out Let's Talk Thunder on YouTube. Subscribe to Locked On Thunder anywhere you get your podcast from. And until next time, be good and be good to one another.